Well, let's imagine that you're coming to gCADPlus for the very first time and you have a mud map of a site that you've been asked to work on and provide a design. So we'll click File and New, and we'll just accept the default drawing. What I'll now do, although you'll have this lying on the desktop alongside you, what I'll now do is to place a scan image of the mud map that we're going to work with. Well, here is our mud map, and to make it a little easier for you to see, I'll just set my drawing colour to red, so whatever I draw now will be in red. So the first step is to say put down the footprint of the house. We always start by doing that. So I'll just pan across, and I do that by holding the wheel of my mouse down, and we can zoom out a little by rolling the mouse wheel towards me, and this gives me an area here where I'll start putting the footprint of the house down. So I'm going to start the line command. So that's draw line. I'll make sure that the word polar down there in the status line is red, and I'll just click some arbitrary position, and then I'll move in the direction I want to go in, and from my mud map I can see that that's 3600 millimeters. Then I'll come down across the back of the house, and it's 8680 and hit enter, and then we come back in this direction 4 meters. So making sure you keep your mouse horizontal, so 4 meters, that's 4000 millimeters in that direction, and then 1 meter in this direction, and we have the house footprint in position. Well, I'm going to change the background colour via view and change it to white to make it a little easier. Now we have a series of steps here which are 1500 by 3600. So again, I'll draw my line command, and this time I want to jump approximately in this area here, but I want to latch onto the building line. To do that, I'm going to use what's called an O-snap or object snap. I'm going to choose that funny little cross one, which means it latches onto that line there, and we come out 1500, and then we come down 3600, and then we can move back across in this direction, and again use one of these snaps and say I'll come perpendicular to that point there. Now the distance that this rectangular area that's going to contain the steps, it's actually offset from there. I've measured that line there, and it's 990. So I'm going to use the modify and offset command, pick that line there, right click and pick as a distance 990, and I'll say OK. Now it's asking me to specify the side, so I'll click there and exit. So I'm right clicking each time. That was done in order to reposition these steps. We're going to pick the steps, and then we're going to move them. We'll click onto this, it's called a handle. We'll click on that one, and we'll make it jump to the end point there. And you see I'm making the software do all of the hard work for me. Once I've used that little construction line, I pick it, right click and erase it. So our footprint's in, our steps are down. The upper boundary of the site is 1 meter away from the house wall. So once again we'll use that offset. So modify, offset, we'll pick the wall, we'll right click, see that the distance was left at 990, we'll click through point, and then right click again, go into distance and make this 1 meter, and then indicate the side. So there we are, we can exit from there. Now the line running along there representing the boundary from my mud map is 23,900. So I can pick that line, just change its length, 23,900, and I'm doing that in the properties box. So there's our side boundary. Once the side boundary is in, we need to put the back boundary in. and remember I'm leaving polar on. That gives me some nice square boundaries. So I can right click and pick line, and I can start my new line from the end there, and then we're going to come down in this direction again, making sure that my line is going to track vertically down, and that's 18900 according to my mud map. And we're there, and then we come back along here for the other boundary, 2400, 2400. And right click to finish. Now that line there, I moved my mouse and it's gone in at angle 179.41. I could erase it and do it again, but I can simply change that to 180. So everything is now squared off. So we have the house footprint there. We have two boundaries in. We have a shed. Let me just refresh your memory. We have a shed that's 8100 by 6000, and so it's an easy job to put that in. The shed is 600 millimeters off from the back boundary and 1000 millimeters off from the top boundary. So again, we can use our offset to locate the corner. So modify, offset, pick this one here, and the distance one, we can leave the distance there and indicate the side, and there we are. This time though, we need to change our through point to 600, and the object to offset is this one, and the side is there. So we have a start point for our shed. I'll just change my drawing colour to magenta, and we'll draw a line from the intersection of those two. This time we're heading back in that direction, 8100, and then we come down in this direction, 6000. Again, being careful, making sure that things are lined up, and then we could go perpendicular to there and then snap back to that point there. Now we can remove those two construction lines. Notice that when I pick one, the other one was previously lost. So for that, just click on the one up here, and now we can pick both of those construction lines and hit the delete key. So the house footprint's in, the shed is in. We have a little bit of work to do over in this zone here for a carport. Let me just show you. The carport again is 6 meters wide and comes back in here 4 meters and then across. So we have a very narrow garden bed here and a small path, then 4 meters by 6 meters. So let's come back into our design. Remember, in model space, this is called, everything is full size. So we can draw another line, and we can pick up the end of this one here and come out there an arbitrary distance, and then we can modify and extend with this magenta line as a boundary, and that line there is extending, and then we can modify and trim, and that line there becomes the cutting edge, and the objects to cut off are that one there. So there's our little path. Just refresh your memory again. We come in here, so we've got our path done. Now we go out 4 meters and then in 6 meters. And we hope that things are pretty close to being done. So we go out, draw a line from the end of that point there. We go out 4 meters, 4000, hit enter, and come down in this direction 6 meters. And we are a little bit short. And at that point, I go back and check, did I make a mistake with this line or at some other point? Well, it turns out that the back boundary distance was incorrect. It should have been 17500. So I've changed its length, and now I've picked this one up, and I can move the end point of that line to the end point of this line here, and we've got quite close. So we have a base plan for constructing our landscape design. Well, our mud map calls for some raised garden beds. Let's put them in. We'll zoom out and just pan across to the space where they go. Draw rectangle, 2 points. First corner point, we'll start in approximately the desired position, which is about there, based on my mud map, and then I'll introduce a new way of working. It's the at sign, and it's for relative coordinates, so at 2500, 1500, and that puts the rectangle representing a raised garden bed in place, and we can copy it from there to that point there. Now we need to add some planting for a Pittosporum hedge. Let me zoom in. So we want a merged set of symbols along there to indicate a Pittosporum hedge, and there's going to be some trimming and maintenance done on those. So let's go to the library and plants. We'll have a look at some of these compound groups, because that's not what I'm after. Just the groups lot. These are drawings with a lot of symbols inside one drawing. So I look at a symbol such as that and see there's a variety of symbols in there. So let's open it and we'll bring it into the drawing, and we'll put it down above where we're working, and we'll click on it and right click and explode. Now we can pick individual symbols that are in here and just pop them in position. There's some hedging along there. Let's right click and scale that by about half, and we'll move it up just a little and copy it like so and like so. One more, I think, and I'll return to the mud map, and the hedging currently indicates runs through there. A compost bin is going to go in place alongside the hedging. So this indicates the raised beds, or the vegetable beds, and some hedging there. So we're making progress. Well, there are a number of ways that notes can be added to a drawing. You can use a leader, dimension, leader, and just click and then move to a position. An existing Pittosporum hedge trim could go in there. The advantage of this is that you can move your label around very easily, but you can also just use draw and text and put in single line text, retain and prune, and indicate it, and indicate some sort of height, and hit enter, and in it goes. So a couple of different ways to put that information in. Well, you may want to emphasize the raised garden beds a little more, and to do that just pick modify and offset, pick the rectangle, right click and just make sure that through point is ticked. That means you can just click inside like so, and inside and inside, so the raised garden beds are now emphasized. You can just pick a piece of text and pick a piece of text, right click and copy, mark a point on the piece of text and do that, then jump into the editor here and put in and edit the piece of text. Well, our designer wants to put a couple of symbols in for a Banksia that's going to be removed, and some agapanthus, so they can be put in, and we want to put some lines hatching in there to indicate boards. Well, I'll just repeat the earlier process, which was to just go up into this group, pick a symbol. This one might work for an agapanthus, and we want to add some notes to remove both of these and establish new planting in its place. And again, that's just using the dimension and leader command again, and indicate like so, typing your message in here. remove blanks here. Not with a double A, but you don't have to worry about the occasional mistake. So that can be positioned, that text can be positioned wherever you want and automatically adjusts. So if we go back into our mud map, we've got our two symbols in. The Banksy is going to be removed and replaced with a lemon, and Agapantha is going to be removed. So I hope you can see that we're building up our model, our landscape design is being built quite quickly and easily.